Mackenzie Mgbako on campus today, tomorrow here in Indiana on the Bloomington campus, taking a visit. Someone that Indiana could definitely use and needs, really, out on that wing spot. Big 6'8", big body dude. They got to sell him. They got to finish it. This is one that Mike Woodson needs to finish the deal on. But I think Indiana's in a better position. I've said this a couple times now, because they filled these other spots, even though it wasn't what they needed yet. But they filled this. They're completely full. Every spot is full, and now Mike Woodson can go to these guys and say, "You're the last piece that we need to be great," and that's a great selling point to both someone like Dingle or Mgbako. And those two would be incredible pieces for Indiana, and I think would leave them in about as good a position as they could have hoped to be in.
Yeah, you look at a scholarship chart for IU right now, they've got 2 available scholarships. If they're fortunate enough to be able to get both Mgbako and Dingle, which I think is probably unlikely considering the situation that they both probably want in college, that would be like a dream scenario for Indiana's backcourt next year. However, like I said, I don't think that's really likely, just considering that both of them are pretty much two guards that are known for their scoring ability, their shooting ability. So I just wouldn't expect that to happen. But at the same time, Indiana obviously hosting a 5-star recruit, a top 10 ranked recruit in the country this weekend is a very big deal. His recruitment's been kind of weird. He was signed to play for Duke for a really, really long time. Things kind of fell through there. He announces that he's out of his letter of intent shortly after Kyle Filipkowski announces his return to Duke for his sophomore year, but they don't really play the same position. Maybe a little bit. Mgbako can maybe play the 4 just a tiny bit. Obviously, Flip plays most of the 4, kind of like a 4-5 Flip is. But this is Mbako's second official visit, I believe. Maybe his third. I know he visited KU recently, and then I know he's visiting St. John's coming up at some point, or already has, and then also has plans to go see Louisville. Shortly after he was out of his letter of intent at Louisville, I had a source indicate to me that, or shortly after he was out of his letter of intent at Duke, I should say, sorry. I had a source indicate to me that Louisville was a potential landing spot for him. And Jim, I don't know about you, but like if you track Louisville's offseason, it makes 0 sense at all. Like they were
we've talked about it. It's incredible.
Yeah, they were one of the 2-3 worst Power 5 teams in the country last season, Power 6 teams in the country last season, along with like Minnesota and Cal and Georgetown. And they've made like no additions at all. Their most notable addition would be Sky Clark, the former Illinois point guard. And then they've added the Division II guy, I think. So maybe he goes to Louisville and just gets a ton of shots.
They've made a lot of offers to people. They're getting a lot of visits from guys. Mgbako is like we said, he's leaving Indiana to go down there. But Kenny Payne just has a lot of connections. I've talked to Rick Bozich about this, and he has a lot of connections. And so he's going to get the visits, I guess. But I just don't think that Louisville can be like for a couple of these guys, they're not ready to win. They're not going to win next year. They're going to win more than they did last year, but
you can't.
That's not saying. That's not saying a whole lot. So I just don't see that as if I were in their position personally. I just wouldn't see that as I don't know but you come to Indiana, you're going to get playing time if you're Mgbako or Dingle, because you're needed. You're needed. You are the needed pieces. Are you going to get less? Yeah, because Indiana would be a deeper team. And speaking of that, Indiana would be a better team than they were last year. If they were able to land 2 guys of this nature, they would be a much better team than they were last year, completely spread out. They would have depth. Apparently, we thought they had depth last year, but that turned out not to be the case. You would certainly look at this as a deeper team across the board if they can fill those spots.
Yeah, I think if they get both Mgbako and Dingle, I can see them being better than they were this past season. I don't know if they get one if they are better, just because I don't know how much they've replaced Trace's production yet. Because I just need to see the front court kind of come together and play. I still have questions about how good of a player Khalil Ware is going to be for IU. Malik Renew is obviously being counted on to take a pretty large sophomore step, I would imagine. And then even like Peyton Sparks, I don't think he's going to be a superstar in the Big Ten. I think you hope he's a reliable guy that you can kind of use off the bench or potentially as a starter if he earns that opportunity. I need to see the front court before I say that they're going to be better than they were last year, because last year's team was a 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. They were a top 20 team for most of the second half of the season. I think the potential is certainly there if those pieces in the front court come together and really click and meet their potential, even if they just get one of them, that of Dingle or Mgbako. Now, it's definitely possible that they are better. And I think the Big Ten is again going to be down. The top of it might be a little bit better, though. So I think that might make things a little bit more interesting for Indiana as they fight for a Big Ten title. But yeah, you put all the different things together, and there's certainly potential for them to be better if everything kind of falls into place. And I think fans at this time of the year, Jim, like, they never think about the wrong thing happening. They always think about, okay, well, this is going to happen because this is where the rumor is right now. And this is already set in stone. Like, this kid's already committed. This is whatever. And a lot of times it just doesn't end up working that way. And like, I'm going to use Michigan as an example from last year. Like, they thought they were getting Terrence Shannon, and then their admissions department didn't let him into school. So, you put all those things together. It's like, you just can't count on something until a kid actually commits or a kid is signed if you really want to go to the fullest extent.
Yeah, Indiana has added a walk-on. I think we talked about that yesterday. 6'6" Ian Stevens from New Pal. But you shouldn't be talking about walk-ons. There's also someone mentioned a rumor that of Mike Woodson being mentioned for the job, the Milwaukee Bucks, after they fire their coach 2 years removed from an NBA title and having the best record in the NBA this season, but losing in the first round of the playoffs. There is no way Mike Woodson goes to another coaching job. This, to me, this is his last coaching job. He's 64 years old or whatever. The money is in the bank. There is no way that I don't think he would want that stress. Although college coaching is becoming more difficult because of all the other things you have to do. I mentioned it yesterday. Recruiting is one thing, which is different. NBA coaches don't have to do. But now you have to re-recruit your entire team virtually every year over year. And it's that to me in itself, I'm like, man, that would take a lot of the fun out of being a college coach.
Yeah, I don't think Mike Woodson will leave Indiana. One, for a couple of reasons. The first being, I think he kind of had his NBA opportunity, and it didn't necessarily end the way he wanted it to. It didn't end greatly in New York with the Knicks. So I think that kind of hurts him. And two, like you said, like, he's just at Indiana. He feels like he's happy at Indiana. He came back to a place that he really probably considers to be home, a place that's very near and dear to his heart. I don't see him leaving Indiana. And I think the Bucks can probably get, and this is no disrespect to Mike Woodson, but like, I think the Bucks can probably get a better coach and someone that is more proven at the NBA level than Mike Woodson is. And guys, like, they have the best basketball player in the world, or one of the 2-3 best players in the world. So I think you probably want to get a coach that's going to make Giannis pretty happy.
Well, I just think that with his age, that's just not a challenge that he would be wanting to take on personally. I wouldn't, but who knows? Patrick Ngamba also receiving an offer from Indiana. Patrick Ngamba II. He's a 4-star center in the 2024 class. So Indiana still continuing to recruit that level as well. 6'10", 215-pound from Fairfax, Virginia. Um, so Indiana is really continuing to extend their overall recruiting, but the important thing right now is filling these 2 roster spots for next season, because they are beyond crucial to what Indiana will be able to do. They really need a Jordan Dingle. That's a guy. I'm not saying they have to have him. He would be really nice, but it's got to be someone like that. And they need a Ngamba, Mackenzie, who can, that big body wing, score, can get to the bucket, help with rebounding. The wing just didn't do a lot for Indiana. They didn't help with rebounding. It didn't help with scoring. So they need to get production out of that spot, one way or the other, to be a successful team. Not that they weren't successful last year, but when I say successful, I'm talking of the upper level. Do you want to compete for a Big Ten title? Which they were capable of that last year, but they gave up a couple of losses that cost them that very thing. The loss at home to Northwestern, the loss at home to Iowa specifically, and the road loss to Iowa with a 20-point lead. So it's a must that they fill these spots, to me, Alec, or I do not see them competing for a Big Ten title.
Yeah, I get that. I think I wouldn't be surprised if they leave one scholarship open. That's becoming a pretty common practice. You just don't really have a need for 13 guys, and quite honestly, you're probably not going to keep all 13 guys happy, which means you're going to end up leaving one of them in the portal at some point in the season or after the season anyway. So I think Indiana's probably going to hope that they just fill one of this last spot, and we'll kind of see what goes and what happens from there. But yeah, I agree. Like the current backcourt situation that they have, it's not good enough to compete for a Big Ten title. I think right now they'd probably project them to be close to the bubble, around the bubble at this point, just because of the questions that they have in the front court, like I mentioned a little bit earlier. And then also just like, I don't know who's going to score on this team at a high level besides Xavier Johnson. And I don't know if I can trust him to score more than 14 points a game. So they need someone else who can put the ball in the bucket and give them 12, 15 points a game, somewhere within that range, 11, 14 points a game, and then kind of move forward from there.